people experience grief in a lot of different ways, and it's not something that you just get over. For me, it's been a process. So I've been divorced now over 30 years. And so I've been through everything, everything that you could possibly imagine in terms of some of the shame that you carry along with that, a lot of the blame and shame of yourself. And a lot of women carry that. There's a lot of cultural aspects where the women are supposed to be the strong, keep the family unit together. It's a loss not only of the relationship, but the future that you thought you were going to have. Perhaps if you have children, it's the loss of the father to your children, depending on the situation, and loss of sense of self. So there's so many components to it. Most people I talk to, the hardest part, it's everything, right? It's all of it. It's redefining who you are. It takes time to heal from that. And it takes, I think, a willingness to be open to do that healing. Because I think for some people, it can be really easy to like, just close the door and then you stay kind of stuck in a bubble of, what do I do next?
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Healing Millions podcast. I'm so excited to be here today with amazing Cindy Eddington, who is a life coach specialized in helping women after divorce and helping cancer survivors find new purpose in their life and heal the emotional wounds after that very traumatic events in their life. Cindy, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining the mission to heal millions of hearts.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Cindy, for women who are going through divorce, for them, that's not only the end of marriage, it's basically end of dream. And like, what part of that process is the hardest for not only women, for every single person included in it?
It's a really good question because I think if you ask most people that I've dealt with, they'll say everything, right? It's a very traumatic experience. People experience grief in a lot of different ways, and it's not something that you just get over. For me, it's been a process. So I've been divorced now over 30 years. And so I've been through everything, everything that you could possibly imagine in terms of some of the shame that you carry along with that, a lot of the blame and shame of yourself. And a lot of women carry that. There's a lot of cultural aspects where the women are supposed to be the strong, keep the family unit together. So there's that aspect of it. As you mentioned, it's a loss not only of the relationship, but the future that you thought you were going to have. Perhaps if you have children, it's the loss of the father to your children, depending on the situation, and loss of sense of self. So there's so many components to it. So like I said, it depends on the person, but most people I talk to, the hardest part, it's everything, right? It's all of it. It's redefining who you are. So, and it takes time to heal from that. And it takes, I think, a willingness to be open to do that healing. Because I think for some people, it can be really easy to like, just close the door and then you stay kind of stuck in a bubble of, what do I do next? There's a lot of fear that comes along with that. And so that can then be expressed in a variety of different ways. So I know that was long-winded, but hopefully that answers your question. I think it depends, but I think most people would say everything is hard.
I think you touched on something that is really important. There's a lot of guilt, a lot of blame, a lot of shame that are mostly conditioned by society. For every single person involved in that process is basically a loss of identity, what you mentioned. So, what are the first steps somebody can take to help themselves in that situation?
I think you need a support system. I think that's the biggest thing, first and foremost. And if you're really struggling with, because there's so much grief that comes along with it, and learning how to regulate your emotions, especially if you have children, uh, seek support. And I would say even seek professional support. Some people might say, well, Cindy, I can't afford that. Get into a community. If you belong to a church or join a women's group, there's so much access now. I mean, 30 some odd years ago, we didn't have the internet, where you could find support groups. So there's a lot of support groups that you can actually get online as well. I think that would be the first step, is to really lean into what you're feeling, feel your feelings, but learn how to actually regulate your emotions in a way that's healthy, not only for you, but for those that might be around you in your life. Like I said, children, it's really important, I think, for you to be able to regulate your emotions if you have children that are still, part of your existence and unit moving forward.
I think you mentioned here something very important, and that was supposed to be my next question. We need to get support and help, not only for ourselves, but also for our children. Because very often that's the biggest pressure from society, to be strong and keep moving forward. And just like life goes on, but you're still trapped in the past and you're still trying to deal with all emotions, trying to be emotionally strong for your kids, but you cannot. And some women will try to pretend everything is fine, and when kids go to bed, they'll cry and
Mhm.
like blame themselves and all kind of things. Do you have any advice to those women who are trying to be strong, who are willing to work on themselves, but there's so much pressure from society and there's so much conditioning, and sometimes if you reach out for help, it's not always well received because, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And then you have another layer of judgment and it's really hard to deal. What would be the best way to support and provide emotional, like, and mental support to those women?
So I can say I've been there. I did exactly that. There wasn't a lot of support systems back then. And I was taught to be strong, it's basically pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Don't be vulnerable. And that can backfire on you later on, because I was a master at tucking all my feelings. So it was like, I don't have time to feel that right now. Oh, I got a little pocket here. I'll just put it here and I'll put it here. So, and that blew up on me later in life, right? There's only so much stuffing that you can do in terms of like what's going on. And so I've lived that part of it. Again, it comes back to support systems. As a coach, these are the things that I help women through. Creating a community. I like to create a community of other women who are going through the same thing. Because you're absolutely right. You can go to another person, but if they're not really experiencing what you've experienced, there can be this whole nother layer of judgment, which then shuts you down to say, oh, you know what? I was right all along not to share anything, right? That was a big mistake. What was I thinking? And so you can shut right back down. And again, been there, done that. And so that's why I think it's really important to surround yourself. We'll clarify that. Not only getting maybe some professional help, but also surround yourself with people that are going through some of the same things. Because then you have at least a little bit more of that rapport. People have a natural understanding of what you've been through, and you're going into a judge-free zone. I'll put it that way.
I love how you put it. Like, I think the best way to get support is the first step is actually get support from people who understand you, who walked in your shoes, because they will have the most compassion for you and they will help you in the way that nobody else really understands you, because you're trying to pull yourself back, but you're trying to be strong and you're trying to fulfill all the things that society tells you to do, but then you lose yourself, and you also need somebody to understand you and be there for you. And that brings me to my next question that I have is, the end of marriage is usually changes not only relationship between partners, but also relationship with the extended family and friends. A little bit about that.
It's layers and layers of grief that I experienced. And, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I know that a lot of the women that I've worked with have experienced the same thing. Absolutely right. I was a part of my ex's family for, 9 some odd years, over 9 years. And so all of a sudden you're cut off from that. And there were many friends that we had as couples. And the same thing, some people would still, remain friends with both of us, but then some people would kind of like take sides. It's like, well, I'm not going to associate, with her anymore. I'm not going to associate with him anymore. And so you lose this whole community that you've identified yourself with for, I don't, however many years or months that it was that you were with your ex-partner. And so, yeah, that's just, again, yet another layer of grief. So now you're feeling even more alone. How can I even go to some of these people that, I were really in my life before? So it's it's really important to understand that that may happen too, that you might have to start developing new relationships and new friendships, and that's going to take a little bit of time, and it's okay. And I just want to tell you that it's okay. You will be able to do that. You will be able to find those people that are going to be your new tribe and your new community, um, and take your time with it. There's no rush. I know sometimes we're like, you feel so alone in it. And it's like, I just need somebody. Again, that's where lean back into the community of people that are going through the same thing. Because again, grief, people think that grief is just when you lose somebody physically in terms of they translate or transition to, they pass on. But this is a really interesting kind of grief too, because it's there always. And you're like, maybe you see your ex, maybe it was the love of your life, and that you see them move on to something else and new friends, and maybe you feel left behind. And so there's maybe this constant thread of grief that continues. So, it's something to keep in mind, and just know that you can do it. You can definitely do it. Get the support that you need to keep moving on. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answer. I love how you explain it. It's going to take some time. It doesn't happen overnight, but you will find your support. You will find people who understand you and who will be there for you. When everything shifts in our life, and there are so many things happening. People are going through divorce, and they lose family, they lose friends. Uh, How can a person regain the sense of hope that something better is possible for them? Because now it's good that we're talking, it's possible for you, but some people who are going through really dark night of soul, they really do not believe in this moment that something better is available to them.
And we all go through that dark night of the soul, right? I mean, to me, I leaned into gratitude because it's really easy to stay stuck in the pit of the darkness, right? How am I going to get out? I started leaning in to gratitude big time. It was like, don't focus on what you've lost. Yes, it happened and it's sad and there's a lot of grief that goes along with that. I started leaning into what do I have right now in this moment, focusing in more on the present moment. What are the small things that bring me joy? Um, Nature. I was a single mom, so I leaned heavily into my daughter. It's like, that was just like this beacon of light for me. So there's a lot of things that you can do to bring, joy into yourself, bringing more compassion into yourself. Now that took a lot of work. Um, that took a lot of work because I had so much blame and shame that I had held inside, but it can happen. So I think the first thing though is just start to lean into gratitude, lean into your faith. If you are faith based, I would say lean into that. If you're not, if you're like, I don't belong to a religion, again, lean into gratitude. That is such a big thing that you can lean into, to start pulling you forward. And then find things. For me, it was finding things that would lift my spirits. So again, being in nature, for me, being in the gym was huge, at that time, just because it was a way for me to, again, regulate my emotions in a way. It was a way for me to release stress in a very healthy way. Um, Yoga, I found yoga was like a huge, huge inspiration for me. And, a friend of mine introduced me to yoga. And I was like, I'm this big gym person. I'm like, at that time, I mean, we're going back many years, right? And, yoga was not like a studio on every corner like it is right now. It was still this way out there woo woo thing. And so I went to this class, and it was a Kundalini class. And so it wasn't really physical. And I was like this hard, physical person. But I walked out of there feeling like I was walking on air. And I had this, to me, it was this huge aha moment. It was like I needed more of that because it wasn't the physical aspect of it. It was just this knowing and feeling of, oh my gosh, it just struck such a chord, it like opened my heart even more. Um, and it led me into doing a lot more inner work because I was just like, I need more of that. I need more of that. And I had a huge aha moment and a recognition that how much of my validation was coming from external sources. And so that to me was the first clue of I needed to go inside and I needed to do more inner work for me and do more healing for myself. And that's where even more gratitude came in. So it was one of these things that physically helped me then mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually to come back inside of myself and do more inner work. So yeah, I would say gratitude's a huge thing to lean into and other things that again bring you joy. And it doesn't have to be where you spend a lot of money because I know that finances end up being such a huge, huge thing for women in particular, especially if you've leaned on your partner for the majority of the funding. So, I mean, you could be left with, what do I do now? And that can be so, so scary. And so, while Cindy, I don't have a lot of money where I could go here, go there. Again, nature, there are ways that you can find free opportunities, to lean into more of things that will give you joy.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You also mentioned something that is really, really important in our conversation today, that a lot of women after divorce feel so lonely. And it's hard to be lonely, and the hardest thing is be alone at home. What would you recommend to them?
Yeah, comes back to community, leaning into whatever community that you're starting to build. Family can, again, if you're close to your family, even if you're not physically proximity wise, again, Zoom is a wonderful way now, or even just a phone call. Um, and again, finding things that give you joy, finding ways that you can be really comfortable being in your own skin. A lot of women, express, I don't know how to be I don't know how to be myself without a partner. Right. So that can be a very scary. It's like, oh, well, I need to get out there right away. I need to like be dating right away. And that's great. I think that that's wonderful. I would recommend, there's certain recommendations I would make when you get into that dating pool, because I've been there and done that as well. And I would say really lean into finding yourself first, looking at the relationship that just ended, start to question, why did that end? What were some of the contributing factors on both sides, right? Because it is a relationship. What were the things that maybe you didn't see, that would be, red flags moving forward. So it's really, again, tuning into learning how to be alone with yourself and being really comfortable with that. And at first, it can be really, really uncomfortable if you're not used to it. So again, I'm just going to encourage the folks that, in particular, I work with women that are in that space, find the things again that give you joy. Start to explore. Maybe before you entered into this relationship, maybe you loved painting and that kind of went by the wayside. Maybe it's because now you have some children in the mix as well. Start to go back and lean into what are the things that, my, I haven't done that in a long time. Maybe it's reading a book. I would encourage women to start journaling. Journal every day of just, it doesn't have to be a book. What am I feeling today? Oh, I'm feeling that. Where's that coming from? Start to ask some deeper questions of yourself, to start to explore a little bit more. And again, this is where some professional work, like working with a coach or working with, a therapist, or again, being in a women's group. Maybe you join a book club where it's an interesting book. I'm actually reading a book right now. I'm going to plug Mel Robbins right now on your show. I love her. I'm reading the Let Them Theory. And I'm in a book club right now and just, again, digging deeper and finding out more about yourself. These can be ways for you to like really lean into, yeah, I'm alone, but I don't necessarily need to feel lonely because I can fill myself with other things that give me joy.
I love that. I really, really love that. Everything what you explain is finding the joy. finding things that you forgot or gave up just because you didn't have a time for yourself. And I really, really love that. When you lose loved ones, partners, when marriage falls apart, how can somebody rebuild themselves and rebuild their confidence and self-worth?
That's so huge. I think that's like the key critical question to ask, right? Especially for women, because that is exactly, I definitely went through that. I not worthy, not good enough, the messaging that came down to me, and I had this limiting belief that I needed to be perfect in order to be loved. And so I went to uber perfectionism. Self-care is huge step into self-love because this is what worthiness is all about, self-love, right? And I think an entree into that is learning how to care for yourself because most women are taught not to be on their list. You take care of everybody else. Everybody else comes first, right? And if you do, and if you're on your list, typically you're last on your list. And so what I like to tell women is you need to actually put yourself at the top of the list, which can be like, oh, wait, what are you talking about, Cindy? Top of my list? Isn't that selfish? No, it is not. It is not. Selfish ends up getting this, it's such a term that it's like a dirty word, right? You know, it's cliche. You'll hear this a lot, but they'll say, the mask comes down in the airplane, the oxygen mask comes down. Who do you put it on first? Yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself and nurturing yourself, you really aren't being able to give out complete love to the other people that are in your life that you think you are, but you're really not. And so that to me is where the worthiness starts. And a way to get into that is again, self-care, baby steps, one little step that you can do to nurture yourself. And again, this doesn't mean that I need to go and do a spa day. It could be, but you're like, well, maybe Cindy, I don't have, what, a couple $100 or whatever to go to the spa day. Maybe it's just I'm going to close the door and take a hot bath and light some candles. Again, nurturing my own soul, taking care of me, taking time every day, just a few minutes to be alone, to do that journaling or to meditate, or just to maybe it's I'm going to watch a movie that only I want to watch, something of that nature. It can be so, so simple, but start to pay attention to putting yourself on the list and get yourself on the top of the list. It will totally flip the script in terms of your entire life. Because once you start loving yourself completely, flaws and all, because we all have them, we're perfectly imperfect. That's the big thing that I learned. I don't have to be perfect in order to be loved. And that's a huge, huge shift. And that took me many years. Like I said, this is a process. So if you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there, Cindy, yes, you will. It just means taking step after step. And every step that you take, you build more confidence, right? Oh, I did that. Oh, that felt good. Oh my gosh, I can take another step. And the more you do that, right? And then again, having community that's cheering you on as well. Wow, you did that again, having your little rah rah section, so important. And celebrating yourself. How many of us set a goal and we put our nose to the grindstone and we get there and then we should celebrate and we're like, oh yeah, on to the next. No, this is really going to help. This is huge. You take a step and you acknowledge that step. And one of the things that I learned through my coach of way back when is it would be like, okay, Cindy, you did that. So every time you do a step like that, I want you to say out loud, I am amazing. I am awesome. I am a rock star. And do a little movement with it and do a little happy dance that goes along with that because the movement and saying it out loud actually creates this different kind of energy that you kind of come into then, not even kind of, you do come into and you're like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. And you're charged up and motivated and inspired then to take the next step. So these are kind of like the tools that you can use, right? In terms of self-care, but then also how do I motivate myself? How do I inspire myself to take the next step? And then again, the community around you that's like, yeah, you did that. And how awesome is that? And then let's not let's remember this. I'm going to go on a little roll my soapbox here. This is a process. You're going to trip, you're going to stumble, you're going to fall. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. You might take 2 steps forward and take a step back, but now guess what? You're not here anymore. You're here. And then maybe you take 2 more steps forward and you take another step back. Well, now you're here because you're learning as you're going along. And every step, right, in your process, you're getting stronger, feeling more confident. And you are going to get there. You are going to get there. I've done it. If I can do it, and let me tell you, I was like in the deepest, darkest hole that you could possibly imagine. And if I can do it, you can do it too. That's why I say, it's like, it's taken me a lot of years. Is it perfect yet? No, it never will be. But I have a sense of self that I never had before. Do I love myself? Absolutely, I do. Flaws and all. Flaws and all. Because we are perfectly imperfect. That's human experience. We're here to learn and grow and evolve. And it takes time. And sometimes you're going to have big spurts where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it. That's great. Wow, you're here now. Celebrate it. And then you might have a moment where you're like, I'm back down here. When you're back down here, here's the thing. When you start going through this process of self-care, self-love, you recognize it quicker. Oh my gosh, this is what's going on right now. I've learned I've got a whole bucket tools. I got a whole tool belt full of tools now that I share with the women that I work with of like, how do I get out of that quicker? Because now I can see it. The awareness, right? I have so much more awareness now. That's what's going on. Okay, I know what I need to do so that I'm pulling myself out of it so much quicker and I'm not staying in the pit of despair and grief because grief is interesting. It is not this linear straight line thing, right? Where if, I've got 7 steps and right when I get to here, it's done. I still have moments of grief from way back when. Something new will happen and it'll be like, and it'll just take me back to another moment. But now I recognize it. I feel the feelings that go along with it. I'm not stuffing them anymore. And then I transmute that. As my friend Gail would say, I alchemize that, so that I can move on to the next step very quickly in the moment. So I know that was long-winded explanation, but once you get me on my soapbox, Nina.
I love it. It was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. I wanted the real you. I wanted the real conversation with person who went through everything. So you can share your experience and help more women heal. And thank you so much for being honest. And thank you so much for the fire. You. Thank you. It was perfect. I just want to ask you one more question. If you can go back to time and give your younger self piece of advice, what would that be?
You're going to be okay. It's just one chapter. It's one chapter in your life. And you're going to learn from that and you're going to grow from that and you're going to be okay. You're strong, you're resilient, you're going to be okay. I think that's the biggest message. You're going to be okay. Even when you think it's not going to be okay, you are. It's all good. You're having a heart opening, I call them heart opening experience for a reason. You're having it for a reason. And that is to open you up to yourself, to learn more about yourself, to love yourself even more. And if you come from that perspective, everything will start to fall into place. It's happening not to you, it's happening for you. It's happening for you to learn and grow from. Yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful. You know what I love about your teachings is not everything is so bad. You learn from the experience. You get new skills, you get new gifts, you have a completely new life experience and a completely new life chapter. And that's a blessing. I love how you rephrase that. And thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you for the amazing work you do. I know you're an amazing community. Um, Diamond Beauties Forever from Sanat, and you do an amazing work there to inspire women, to help them. You also have a weekly Miss Pod, so it's like a coffee chat where women can come and connect with you and talk to you. It's a free of charge. Connect with Cindy. She is really amazing. I love you, Cindy. Thank you so much for the work you do We will add your details, contact details, so people can find you in the description below. And just want to say thank you so much once again. And it's my honor and pleasure to have you here. And everybody else who is watching and listening, if this conversation inspired you, moved you, touched you, please share it with your friends and family, because we are on a mission to heal millions of hearts, and we can only do this together. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work you do. Until next time, be brave, shine your light, because the world needs that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug. Bye for now.